Cool. So you don't have to suffer with my ugly mug today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a presentation, if you like. Purely to mix things up. So fasting is something that I get asked a lot about. And it is an interesting topic. In fact, it's an absolutely fascinating topic if you delve into it. But here's the thing. It's like so many marketplaces. It is completely convoluted, massively understood, and there are even products out there to help you with these things. Some are useful, some are not. There are some tools which are useful as well, and I'll talk about a couple of those things as I go through. So anyway, this is what it is really. I just sort of want to talk about if it works for weight loss, how long to fast for, when to fast, and what to eat when not fasting, and some of the long-term effects of fasting. And I think really the first thing to cover is what actually is fasting. What does it mean? And it's really simple. It just means any period of time when you are not eating. However, some people would have a different definition. They'd say it's when you're not eating and you're not also digesting food. And I think that would be a more accurate way of describing it, to be honest. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about fasting. So your body is not digesting food. You are then fasting. And there's tons of different types, and you'll have heard of things like a 5-2 diet and intermittent fasting. They're probably the most common. But actually, fasting has been used for thousands, throughout all documented human history. And actually, a lot of animals as well will fast. And you'll hear these things like snake diet, where people will only eat sort of once every 4 days or something like that. All sorts of things come around. And these things are mostly gimmicks, mostly fads, and mostly marketing tools. But fasting has been used really throughout human history for all sorts of reasons. It could be medicinal reasons. There are health benefits, which I'll talk about. There have been religious reasons that people have fasted, maybe on a full moon or something like that. People have fasted for all sorts of belief systems. And what I found, actually, is I thought, well, rather than sort of delve into my own definition of this, if somebody's already put one out there, is I found this thing, it's called a fasting pyramid. I'll bring it up and you can have a look and sort of read through it. I don't want to talk over it, but I'll sort of go through it. I'm a big believer that almost every presentation that I've sat through, in fact pretty much every single presentation, and this is now going to be one of them, has too many slides and too many words. So and that detracts from the person who's speaking, and that's whether it's online, a webinar, or whether it's in person. The in-person ones tend to be the worst. That's a death by PowerPoint. But anyway, let's have a look at this. Let's break all my own rules and have a look. So here's your different types of fasting. All right. What have you got going on here? I just found this. It's from Dr. Mindy Pelz, I think. Or somebody who's decided to register drmindypelz.com. I have no idea. Anyway, you can now get busy reading what these are. All right. I'm not particularly worried as such about all the terminology on the right that's trying to define what these things are, but I will go through them. So at the top of this pyramid, you've got dry fasting. All right. Now it says any of these 3 fasts are best. I'm not going to patronize you. You can read. Okay. Do I agree with these things? Well, somewhat. Dry fasting. And by the way, if you need to pause to read this, do that. Dry fasting is something, and this says best done with a group or coach. Quite frankly, dry fasting is something that should be done only under medical supervision. You'll have heard that we can live without food for lots and lots of days, but without water for only a couple of days, something like that, right? Dry fasting is not something that I'd recommend to anybody to be doing. Far from it. I really wouldn't. Those are things that need to be done in the clinical settings, and you need to be medically supervised, and you certainly need to be checked for all sorts of reasons, whether it's blood pressure, if you're on certain medications, any underlying health conditions. It can cause all sorts of problems. Ultimately, if you think about it, dry fasting means that you are consuming nothing. So, in terms of food or drink. Well, what's the result going to be of dry fasting? Well, death. So you need to be careful, yeah, because we don't want you to die. So let's be mindful of that with dry fasting. So stay away from that one. unless you have any particular interest in. I mean, explore it if you want, but I would stay away from it. Now, it's 3 to 5 day water fasting. So this is really what most people talk about when they talk about fasting. They're just drinking water, or maybe tea or coffee. Right? That's water fasting. That's what most people would perceive as fasting. Okay. Now, 3 to 5 days is quite a long time to purely consume water and no food whatsoever. It's quite a long time. It's not easy to do. It's also not particularly difficult to do. But you have to think about your reasons for doing it. If you do that, what will happen after around about 3 days? For some people, it's maybe 2 days. Some people, it's 4 days. Depends how much glycogen you've got stored around your liver, which is a sort of reserve tank of energy. You'll start to then burn fat, and you go into a process which is called ketosis. So when people say, I'm on a keto diet, they don't really understand what they're talking about. That actually only happens after you move into this process of your body starting to burn its own fat. And that takes quite a long time to occur. It really does. Because we do store a lot of carbohydrates in our muscles, for example. So to get to that point, you have to be fasting on water for about 3 days. And this thing suggests that it's best done 2 to 3 times a year for resetting your metabolism or deep healing. I'm not going to say yay or nay to that. It is what it is. But what I would say is that that's quite a difficult thing for most people to do, and they tend to rebound if they do that. And I'm going to talk about rebounds in a moment. This 36 to 48 hour water fast as well. Is it easy to do? Yeah, maybe. Stop eating at Saturday lunchtime. And then don't eat until Sunday evening. Yeah, you can do it. But why would you do it? And that's what it comes down to. For the vast majority of people, almost everybody, probably 99% plus people, they are fasting because they want to lose weight. And what they really mean is they want to lose fat. And that's an interesting concept that we talk about here. So think about it. Stop eating loads of food. Okay, yeah, you're going to lose fat. But how much fat are you realistically going to lose in 36 hours? Probably not very much. And if you're starving hungry, you're going to feel like lots of exercise? Probably not. Like most people, if you stop eating, you probably feel hungry. That's natural. That's the body going, I need to eat something. That's just a normal response. That's what should happen. And it happens to every animal. And then this other one that comes into here is autophagy, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, and fasting mimicking. There's a chap called Walter Longo. He's probably the world expert on this. And he talks about fasting mimicking diets. The experiments have been done in rats, showing that if you reduce their calories over a certain period of time, and that certain period of time is typically their life, then their life becomes about 20-30% longer. However, we are not rats. But it does seem to have similar effects in humans, which is actually very interesting, which is fantastic. This slide is actually wrong. I've just picked up it's an autography as well. It's actually not quite the case. Interesting, that one. But there we go. Anyway, so that's suggesting doing it 5 days out of a month. That's quite a lot. But this the idea of this is low calorie. So remember that 5-2 thing that came around for a while, which was sort of like 5 days of the week, eat what you like, and the other 2 days just eat maybe a small amount, 500 calories, 600 calories, whatever, right? That type of thing. So there's other ones there as well. And then you've got this 24-hour fast, which is suggesting only drink water for it. And then there is DTD, which is dusk till dawn, and OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. So all of these things are kind of the same thing, really, which is basically saying, let's see how long you can go without eating for, and with the goal that you're likely to eat less and lose weight. The problem is these things come with an awful rebound of you being starving hungry. So what I've found and what the research shows is these things are not particularly effective. But it is interesting. It's good for lowering weight loss resistance. I'm not really interested in that as such. Intermittent fasting is what most people know as fasting as such. And they talk about here, it says 13-16 hours fasting meals. Yeah, it makes sense. And this is sensible. When we look at the blue zones, I'm just going to move on to this about weight loss. When we talk about blue zones, which is something I talked about in one of the previous videos, you find that people actually, they tend to eat on average about twice a day. maybe 3 times, what average I say. But they tend to eat really the last meal probably just before it gets dark. And bear in mind that most of those countries and areas that are in the blue zones, they tend to be sort of Mediterranean, so mid-latitude, sort of 30 to 40 degrees north, not really extreme fat. So their time when it gets dark tends to be around 7 p.m. So they would rarely eat after that time, which is quite interesting. So when you're looking at this sort of thing, that most people actually, particularly in the UK, eat far too late. So you do want to have a sort of 12 to 14 hour window where you're not eating. And the idea of that is that you sleep on an empty stomach. That's what we're talking about. So that's quite interesting. And I'll cover that in a bit. This one about fasting for weight loss, it really is a yes, no, maybe answer. It depends. It depends on your reasons, and it depends what you're doing. Okay? What I mean by that, and this is the interesting bit, is why are you doing it? Okay? And how long are you likely to do it? So this is all about the setup, okay, and the exit. So what I mean by that is you need to have a plan. So you might say to yourself, right, on the 5th of January until the 3rd of March, I am only going to eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Okay, right. If you can do that and you set yourself that and that is rigid, yes, it's likely to work for weight loss. One-off 24-hour fast, no. It's not going to make any difference at all. In fact, you're likely to get a rebound where you're going to be so hungry after that 24 hours, you're going to go and eat loads of food. So that doesn't work. And it's the same. So you've got to be strict about these things if you're going to do it. And this is where people go very wrong when it comes to fasting. They think if they're not going to eat. Because what's happening is your body's always trying to maintain an equilibrium. Homeostasis is the word for it. So, and this is the same actually with any food or any drug as well. It's the same thing. It's like people who try and cut down on drink, for example. They might drink a little bit less, and then their body goes, I don't like that. It's not what I'm used to. And it goes back to what it was before. And this is the same thing. So this is where we talk about things like stretch receptors, density receptors, dopamine receptors, and so on. This is something which is a lot more detail than I would put in this. So for weight loss, it kind of depends. It can work, but it's not a great strategy. And that's what I'm going to come on to as a better strategy for it, as to how to do it. With respect to when to fast, it's simple. When it's dark. And I appreciate that in the UK, that's not very often. Well, your days are 18 hours long typically in the UK. Maybe from May through to July. Whereas at this time of year, your fast would be much longer. But really, you want to be fasting at night time. So you do want to adjust this, and the research does show that people that don't eat late at night, they tend to be much healthier, far less disease incidence. The quality of sleep is far better as well. So that's what you want to be doing. So you want to be saying, right, okay, maybe about 6 p.m., that's my last meal, and then I'm not going to consume any food again until the next day. Now, when the next day is up to you, but for a lot of people, they're not always that hungry in the morning. Some people are very hungry, but the most important thing to do when breaking the fast is going to be fluid. Water in particular, and you'll see this with every single animal, and we are no, particularly the great apes, but as humans we are no different. This is the biggie with the mistakes. This is the common one, the refeed. So a refeed is when you break a fast, right? So let's say you were like, all right, I'm going to do this intermittent fasting and I want to lose weight, and I go, oh, okay, cool, right? So you do that, and you decide that you're going to do 16-8, which means that for 16 hours you don't eat, and for 8 hours you do eat. What is most important with intermittent fasting is what you eat during those 8 hours, not 16 hours. And this is the bit that kind of gets thrown around. Where most people go wrong is they're really, really hungry after fasting for 16 hours, and they eat foods which are very dense in calories, not dense in nutrients. What you want to be doing is getting your food from you're getting your nutrients and your calories from foods which are very dense in nutrients. That's the important bit. So fruits and vegetables and starches and whole grains, and if you eat meat, then lean meats and things like that. What you want to be steering well away from is caffeinated products like coffee, cans of Coke, stuff like that, these refined foods. Those foods, what's going to happen, that's like, imagine what's happening. You think about your body, after 16 hours, your stomach is completely empty. And now imagine you chuck down some Coke into that, or some biscuits, or something like cereal. It's like a rocket going off, and your body goes, whoa, this is like a bomb. And then it's stored a bit. But what happens from an evolutionary perspective is your body goes, awesome, this stuff's available. And what it does is, because it doesn't know when it's next going to get food, it stores it straight away as fat. This is where you find people that fast actually gain weight. So you've got to be quite careful. The way to do this right is get the refeed spot on. And when I say spot on, all I'm talking about is look at that particular slide there. The stuff on the right. That's what you want to be game for. So this is where you want to be breaking the fast, the refeed, water, and lots of soft foods, fruits, and so on. And actually, when people do these long fasts, and in some cases it can be up to 40, 50, 60 days medically supervised. When they break their fast, what they're doing, they start with just very, very diluted fruit juices, extremely diluted. Because what happens is you become a lot more sensitive to any flavors after a period. The way to increase the sensitivity of any organism system, the way to increase the sensitivity is through deprivation. That's why. That's what happens, because tolerance builds otherwise. So really, the longer the fast, the way more dilute you want to be introducing all these foods into it. So that's where we want to be. So we want to be careful with that. So the common mistakes here are getting the refeed wrong, and thinking that if you fast, then during the time you're not fasting, you eat what the hell you like. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. And that's the interesting thing with this. So just be careful. With respect to long-term effects with this, interesting picture here. This is what this is. This is autophagy. It's a biological process which your body cleanses itself, and it starts to occur after about 24 hours. Now, this is really useful in autoimmune conditions. This is where it happens. So if you take somebody with fibromyalgia, for example, what happens if they will fast for 24 hours and just on water? Almost all of the effects of fibromyalgia go. They disappear because the body goes, easy. Now now I'm not getting the foods in which are causing the problems, causing my body to attack itself and so on. For pretty much any autoimmune, fasting is devastatingly effective. And whenever I say fasting, I'm talking about water fasting. Extremely effective. But the long-term effects of this, if you can do this sensibly, and I would suggest about 12 hours is sensible. So maybe from 6, 7, 8 p.m. until 6, 7, 8 a.m. the next day is sensible, realistic. That can be in everybody's life. That's not difficult to do. If you do that, and then when you refeed, you break the fast, you do that with nutrient-dense foods, not calorie-dense foods. The long-term effects of that tend to be lower weight, lower blood pressure, lower HbA1c, which is for type 2 diabetes, and then as a cascade of all of those things, it tends to be a lower risk for pretty much every disease that we see that's common in the West, including all the autoimmune diseases as well. So really, if you want to look at this and you want to say, yeah, okay, fasting's for me, I'll give it a go. Well, you already do it anyway. The question is, how long do you do it for, and what do you eat when you're not fasting? Those are the questions you want to be asking. Hopefully this is useful. Any questions, or if anybody wants way more in depth with this, or to have something customized for them, let me know. Hopefully useful.